I do believe that beets are a viable source for creating nice color when dyeing textiles naturally. Even though in my first video my results were not what I expected, I did learn a lot from the outcome that I did achieve. However, in this video, I want to try one more time to see what result I can get. So check it out. This is a polo style dress, 100% cotton, white, that I'm going to be dyeing for one of my daughters. And I'll use the beads to achieve the pink color that she requested. But I'm just going to bind this up to create some sort of pattern on it and then proceed with the dyeing process. Beets definitely lend themselves to solo dyeing. You know, they give up the color pretty easily. And I prefer solo dyeing because of the sustainable nature of it. But for this purpose, or in this moment right here, I decided to go ahead and boil it to maybe just try to get a quicker result so I can get through the process. I added some ferns from my yard. Ever since somebody mentioned in my comments that ferns have a high concentration of aluminum, which can be used as a mordant for fabrics, I use them every now and then for the mortating process.
Where's my dress? Where's my dress?
I like this outcome. The color was good. It was a light pink, as you can see. And I think my daughter was pleased with it. You can see the lines in the middle where I put the elastic bands to just create some sort of pattern. I actually added some bands to the collar as well, trying to do some sort of contrast there as well. It didn't show up as great. And the dye, once the dye sits for a while, it's going to eventually turn brown, but it pretty much transitions, in my experience doing this, from the pink color to a red color and then brown. Now, right here, you can see the color that the dress eventually turned after a day or two. It's more brown now, and that was just leaving it out of the dye to hang dry. And so I put the bands back on it, and this time I'm gonna put it back in the same dye that I used initially, and I'm gonna solo dye it this time and see if I can get the pink color back again. On this part, I really needed to wipe the camera lens, so my apologies for not doing that. It's a bit blurry. But this is after maybe a couple days of the dress being back in, well, being in the jar of dye out in the sun. And it really didn't pick up more of the pink color because, as I mentioned previously, the dye is eventually going to turn brown. So that's where it's heading. It's turning brown. So the dress is not going to necessarily be dyed pink at this point. And ultimately, if I want to achieve pink, I am going to have to make new dye with a new bead in order to get that color. This color is, it's somewhere between pink and brown, but it's leaning more toward brown, and we're going for pink here. As you can see, this dye is more of a red color at this point, so I've let it sit out here for several days, and it's no longer giving me pink dye. This is the dress after it dried. Well, it's actually wet again now, but it was much lighter than this, and it is more of a brown color than pink. And I know the reason for that is I did not come out here and take it out of the sun after a couple days. I left it for one more day, and that can make a difference in the color. So if I wanted it to be more on the pink side, which is what my daughter wanted actually, I should have taken it out sooner. So here I am again. It's Sunday morning, and I'm gonna dye this dress one last time. I have one beet left, and I cut it into pieces, and I'm gonna put it in a jar. And this time I'm only gonna leave it out here for today. It's pretty sunny. I'm gonna just give it today, like put it out here and let the sun shine on it for several hours today and see what happens. Okay, I'm hoping I didn't use too much water in here because I want the color to be more concentrated. Later in the day, I decided to just go ahead and boil the solution. I had used a lot of water, so I think boiling it was going to be a better option at this point to achieve the pink color. Alright, so we finally achieved the pink color for this dress that she wanted. Something that I've learned in the process of dyeing with beets is that the color is always transforming. Just because it starts out producing pink on fabric doesn't mean it's going to end up that way. Eventually it's going to be brown. So when solo dyeing, if you're doing this, just be mindful of that. Don't leave it in more days than necessary, like I tend to do sometimes when I forget, because the color you're going for may not be the color you get. So here she is wearing the dress. She's happy with it. You can see patterns in there. There's also something to be said about uniformity when dyeing. And the way that I dye things, my colors are not quite uniform anyway. It's always some sort of pattern. Whether I use tie-dyeing processes or not, but there are methods that you can do to get more uniformity in your materials that you're dyeing. But overall, we are happy with the outcome. I don't think Beets will last long. I don't think the color will last long, and we're okay with that. Okay, I realized I needed to add one more part to this video. When I first dyed this dress, it came out pink and then it eventually turned brown. And I could see how a question would come up, well, why wouldn't it turn brown this time? Why, if you eventually achieved the pink color you were going for, why wouldn't it turn brown this last time? I'm recording this right now, right before I post the video, and this is 2 or 3 days after the dress was initially dyed. This is after my daughter put it on in the clip you saw in the video, and it's still pink. It hasn't turned brown. You can see some of the color has faded out of it, so there are more like lines. This natural pattern has developed in it even more so at this point, but it's still pink. And I think the question could be, well, will it eventually turn brown? I don't think that it will. I think maybe the reason that it turned brown initially after dyeing it pink the first time could have been maybe due to the weakness of the dye. So as it dried in the fabric, the color transformed to more of a brown color because the dye had been, exposed to heat from the sun for a few days. And I did this all in one day. I put it out in the sun for solo dyeing, and just a few hours later, I went ahead and boiled it. And maybe that helped to maintain the pink color in the fabric. This is just a theory. I really don't know. So I'll say I'm not positive, but I think it's because I did it all in one day on this try. I dyed the dress. I initially started out solo dyeing the dress, and then I decided to go ahead and just boil it, and I didn't let it sit like I normally do. It's very rare for me that I put something in dye and take it out that same day. It may be the next day, but sometimes it's 2 or 3 days later, and by that time the color has had a chance to transform into something else. So I do think maybe that had something to do with it. As it dried the first time when it was pink, it just eventually turned brown because of that, because the color in the dye had become weaker, not pink anymore. So that's just my theory. I'm not sure, but this is 2 or 3 days later and it's still holding up the pink color. And another video, there may be a part 3 to this where I can show you how this does when it's washed. I theorize that this color will not hold up in the washing machine. I just don't think it will. The shirt that I put in the video earlier, in the little clip where I was hiking, I've washed it and it still has the brownish gray black color from the first time I dyed it with beads and used the rusty clippers. And the iron eventually turned the color brown. It still has that color because iron is a mordant. It can be used as a mordant, so it will hold the color in the textiles. But the pink lines that were in there, they're gone. They washed out. So, meaning the pink line from the beads the second time around. So I do think that once I wash this color will not hold up. But I will do, I guess, a part 3 so we can see that. Okay, just wanted to add that little bit in there about color and why maybe it will stay pink this time outside of washing it. Okay, thank you for watching.